Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us today as we explore 10 and 6's attendance and skills tracking modules. In today's session, we're going to discuss the challenges that many manufacturers face in managing skills inventories for their shop floor staff, as well as keeping lines running when they're short-staffed. The two voices you will hear today are myself, Terry DiPasquale, and that of Dennis Coco, the president of 10 and 6. Oops, there we go. A couple quick notes for today's webinar. To keep on schedule and respect everyone's time, there will be time left for a Q&A at the end of the session. We ask everyone to remain on mute and to use the chat feature of Teams to note any questions, and we'll jump into the chat at the end of the webinar. Also note we will be recording today's session to post on our website, so if you have colleagues you want to share it with based on what you see today, you'll be able to do that. And we'll get started. Before we jump into today's topic, I'm going to give a real brief introduction to 10 and 6 for those that don't know us. And I'll keep this quick, but at a high level, 10 and 6 is a production management system. We position ourselves as a high feature, low cost automated production management system, again, focused on manufacturing. People often ask us, where does the name 10 and 6 come from? And it comes from targeting a 10% efficiency improvement in 6 months. But we do that by focusing on driving awareness and accountability to the critical issues and the right issues in your process that you need to respond to. We work with manufacturers across a number of different industry sectors, heavily into automotive parts, mostly tier 1, tier 2 part suppliers. And we are a London, Ontario-based company, so we grew up in that Rust Belt between Windsor and Detroit and London and Toronto, et cetera. We also work in general manufacturing, from Railback, who produced thousands of hearing aid batteries a minute, to companies like Aprilaire doing air purification and air conditioning systems, and of course in food and beverage, which is an area that we've experienced growth in over the past few years. The thing to note is that all of these customers are using the same underlying code and software from 10 and 6. It's a very flexible to configure solution to fit unique requirements and line layouts and process flows. But at the end of the day, if we come up with new capabilities working with one customer, we can share those with our other customers fairly easily. So that's something to keep in mind. And just my last slide in an overview of 10 and 6. 10 and 6 helps our customers drive improvements in 3 main areas tied to their manufacturing operations. We started out helping people with efficiency, so downtime and other loss tracking, speed losses and changeovers, things like that. Automated production reporting, so getting your shift reports and daily and weekly reports in your inbox with all the information you need to make decisions. And on-call systems to support the operators on the line, constraint management for detailed constraint analysis on lines, and of course, lots of real-time tools to give feedback. We've grown into helping our customers improve quality. This goes all the way from complete paperless quality with our scheduled checks module, so startup checks, in-process checks, 5S checks, making sure they're all done when they should, alerting and alarming if they're not, alerting and alarming if you're out of specification in terms of SPC charting, but also tools like visual inspection. That's used heavily in automotive interiors, also with windshields, things like that, and track and trace for traceability down to serialized parts or units, or lot level traceability for customers that either have regulatory requirements or customer demands in those areas. And finally, we help our customers improve their overall operation or manage their operation of their manufacturing. Issues tracker for tracking continuous improvement initiatives and projects and milestones and goals, and are we moving forward on those projects. Schedule execution to get your schedule from your ERP or MRP or from Excel, where most people still manipulate their final schedule, to get that down to the shop floor so the operators know what they're supposed to be producing at their station or at their line, measuring against our adherence to that schedule, etc. The area we're going to focus on today is around attendance and skills tracking, and in a moment I'll hand it over to Dennis. But the one thing I want to say when we present this to people is that Tenant 6 is a very broad solution. It's designed to help you improve your entire production operation. That said, most of our customers start with one or two modules or areas that they're trying to drive improvement in. So they may start with efficiency and grow into paperless quality, or they may start with us because they have a need for traceability and they start there, but then realize they'd like to take advantage of the production reporting tools, et cetera. So not to be overwhelmed with the breadth of it, you do not have to run all of the solution. You can start with a business need with a definable improvement you want to make and work towards that. So with that, I'm going to leave it there. And certainly if you want to know more about Tenant 6, we hope you'll follow up with us after the webinar, but I'm going to hand it over to Dennis to talk about our attendance tracking module and our skills tracking module.
Okay, thank you very much, Terry, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to introduce to you today our newest module, the Attendance and Skills Tracker. For some reason, I don't have the ability to slide or advance slides here, Terry.
Let's see.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
Okay, so the new module we have augments our current solution. So up till now, we've been focused on equipment and materials and processes and how we can be more efficient in those areas. But this new module is the first time we're introducing something that helps support the human capital equation of your manufacturing operations. We're hearing from our customers that it's very difficult to even launch the start of shift anymore because they're not even sure who's present in the plant and who's available to work. There's a lot of problems with getting staff in. There's a lot of absenteeism. Many of our customers actually have to resort to temp agencies. And I've heard as many as 20 or 30 temp employees are coming in every day to support production operations. So these are some of the challenges that we're hearing from our customers is that they don't know who's available at the start of shift, and they don't even know if they have enough staff to get their lines up and running. And then if they are short-staffed in certain areas, no visibility on how to find out if they can borrow someone from another area or make decisions about maybe moving staff from non-critical areas to critical areas, so at least you can get your critical production operations going or maybe potentially running at a reduced rate. Maybe an area is supposed to have 5 staff members and you only have 3. So you have to make that decision to slow down your line or slow down your production output, but at least get something going. So these are some of the challenges we're hearing from our customers, and this is what the attendance tracking module is designed to support. So we developed the module, and some of the features are that it will connect directly to your time and attendance system, like whether it's Chronos or ADP or attendance on demand. These are some of the clocking systems that our customers are using. Or if you don't have one of these third-party time and attendance systems, you can fully clock in and out of Tenant 6 directly. And what we're going to do is that in real time, provide you visibility on who's clocked in, who's available, and who's absent. And give you the tools to see who's absent, how many people you expect by area, by line, by department, and then the ability to support moving staff around as needed. So you can make a quick request to a different department to see if they can shuffle people from a non-critical area to a more critical area. And one of the other benefits of this new module is that you're going to have real-time labor tracking, right down to how many people by role, by department, by function within the line or cell. And then you're going to be able to develop metrics and reports that'll give you metrics like the cost per piece on the labor side. So let me show you a picture here of what this tool looks like. What you're going to see is what we call the employee status board. And this is highly configurable. You'll be able to show lines and areas, and within areas, maybe down to sub areas like zones, and right down to, as an option, to be able to define exactly each of the processes within that area. So what function needs to be performed, and then who has clocked in. So at the beginning of the shift, what you're going to see is that until someone actually clocks in, they're going to be shown up in gray. They'll be dimmed out. As they clock in, maybe they clock in 2 or 3 minutes prior to the start of shift, they'll show up in a standard font. And then after the shift starts, they're going to show up in red if they didn't clock in. So this really quickly points your eye towards who's absent for today in this shift. We also use color coding to indicate how many staff members are expected, how many blank positions there are. So a vacant position shows up in orange, extra staffing shows up in blue. So Ken, in this case, is considered a floater. He's for the cell 33 area, and we can move Ken as we need to some of the other processes if required. So we can see quickly Ken is available, Derek's missing. We can move Ken into that role, but we're still short one individual in zone 3. So that's the kind of tools you're going to be able to see in real time. And again, this is connected directly to your time and attendance clock system, and you're going to get real-time updates as people clock in and out of the plant.
Dennis, I'm just going to note as well that if you do not have a time and attendance system like that, we do have the ability for you to clock directly into 10 and 6 to track attendance as well. So just so for people to know that if they don't already have a time and attendance system.
Okay. So one of the other benefits that I talked about is the idea that you can track your real-time labor costing. So if you're going to run a particular department or a particular area or a particular zone with different levels of staffing, whether in this example here, you can look at the product 277221. Over the last 8 weeks, we ran with 3 people sometimes, we ran with 4 people sometimes, and we ran with 5 people sometimes. What we're able to do over that historical period is determine your average pieces per labor hour. And in this case, you can see, Terry, do you mind advancing the slides for me?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So in this case, you can see that it turns out that it's actually cheaper to run with 3 people instead of the planned 5 people that you're expecting to run the cell with on that particular product. So it's actually $1.92 per piece when you factor in your labor costs as a result of running with 3 people versus 5 people, which is more expensive. So these types of reports are available because you're now tracking in real time exactly how many people you're running across all cells, zones, and departments in your plant.
And Dennis, if I could just add here as well, that for customers that are also using the production reporting side of 10 and 6, that you can choose, if you're going to run a cell with 3 people instead of 5, you can choose to adjust your targets for that shift so that the operators working on that line will be being measured against a fair target. So they won't see themselves running in the red all day just because they're short staffed. So we have that ability as well within 10 and 6. You can choose optionally to do that or not do that when you're running short staffed.
Okay, excellent. So yes, wrapping up some of the benefits here is you're going to be able to respond in much quicker when you have staff shortages. You're going to probably eliminate that panic that you have at the start of the shift where you have to run around and try to figure out who is in the plant, who's not in the plant. You don't even know because sometimes someone is actually in the washroom before the start of the shift. And so you don't even know if they're available until you hit that start of production time. And then the panic sets in when you realize you have no idea how you're going to start production because you don't have all the right people in the right places. It's going to be a lot easier to help you balance the staff. You can see the large picture of who's available across the whole plant. You can start making requests to other team leaders, other supervisors. You can make decisions about prioritizing high priority areas and low priority areas and move your staff as needed. And then the final benefit would be that true labor cost tracking and historical reporting on absenteeism. It's interesting that a lot of our customers don't have really good handle on what level of absenteeism they have, especially down to the detail level of a certain area, a certain line, a certain zone. I'd like to move on now to another component of this module, which is the skills tracking, and they are tied together. The attendance and the skills tracking can be purchased as a bundle so that you get the benefits of both. You can also run them separately or individually. So the idea here is that we're hearing from our customers that tracking the skills required and all the training for all the staff is becoming a bigger and bigger issue because of all of the high turnover in production staff. The absenteeism is a problem, and because of absenteeism and trying to move people around, they're not even sure if the person that's moved into a role even has the correct skills to do that job. There's also challenges with a need to make sure that any expiring skills, some skills need to be recertified or retrained every 12 months, for example. And keeping a handle on who needs to be retrained is becoming more and more difficult for our customers. We don't want to have scenarios where you have people that are not fully trained to do the job. We want to be able to make sure that we give you the tools to help manage your training content. That's some of the challenges that we hear from our customers is, how do I develop the content for my training? How do I distribute that content? How do I make sure that the latest content is available when someone is being trained? And is it possible to even make the training self-serve so that we can streamline our training processes? So these are the challenges that you probably are experiencing with your staff and your plants. And we want to see if our tool that we've developed here is going to be helpful for you. Perry? Okay. So we've developed the skills tracking module that gives you, again, similar to that employee board that we showed you earlier, visibility on who has the proper skills to perform the tasks that they're on. We're also going to give you simple content management for your training modules, an easy way to develop the content and distribute the content. We also would like to give you tools to be able to support training modules that are plant level, department level, or machine level. So for example, your WMIS training is something that has to be done plant-wide, but there may be some modules or components of that that are specific to a certain area or a machine. Same with the startup of a machine is specific to that machine only. It's not a plant level training module. So we have that ability to support that notion of plant level, department level, or machine level training. We also have the ability to track whether someone is fully trained or partially trained. So you can have a 30, 40, 50% training level. So you're indicating someone's kind of still novice at the role versus an expert. And then also emailed alerts or text alerts if someone has some expiring notifications. So you should be able to see a report at the start of the month, everybody that's going to have expiring qualifications during the month. So you can plan in advance when you're going to retrain some of your staff. So again, let's go back to that attendance board. This is the employee status board. What we didn't talk about is the color coding here, where we have green, we have yellow, we have red. Green means that person is fully qualified and fully trained to perform the job in that role. Red indicates that they do not have the full training. And orange indicates that they have expiring training qualifications. So they're not fully, yellow, is, for example, Dustin G here has some training components that are going to be required to be recertified in the next 30 days. So this is a simple tool now. And if you move someone from one role to another, you're going to get an advanced warning to say, no, you can't move this person to that role because they don't have all the qualifications to do that job. So if we move on to the next slide, we're also going to show you that we can see when someone clocks into a particular area, they can see that they get a notification here that they're missing one of the training components. So if I clock into an area, I can see that I have 5 out of the 6 training modules completed, but I don't have the setup and startup training complete for this particular machine. We talked about that self-serve idea, where if I could click on the particular module, I can launch that training module. Training modules can be multiple steps. You can have any number of steps, and you can have things like video content or PDFs that explain some of the training content, as well as adding in the notion of putting in testing questions. So if we advance to the next slide, you can see that some of the Training modules can include a test your knowledge component. So you can have multiple questions. People are either supposed to enter a yes, no, or put in an answer and go through the entire sequence of all the steps. As a supervisor, then, I can see across all my staff which modules everybody has been trained on and what percentage of training they are, as well as whether some of those modules are waiting for approval. So even if you did a self-serve training, you still have to require someone to go in and approve that. So I can click on a particular individual and then see how long they spent on that training module. So if I advance to the next slide here, you're going to see that for that individual, when they started their training for each of the modules, how long they spent going through the content. And then I have the option here to click on the individual module or click on the approval and approve them. If I click on the module, I'm going to see the details of what they entered. I also can see how long they spent on that training module. This is an interesting component because if they only spent 49 seconds on a module, it probably suggests that maybe they didn't watch the entire video, maybe they didn't read the entire content of the training. I probably shouldn't approve that. Okay. So this is the easy way to manage all the people within your department and see at a glance who needs what training and when they completed their training. So we're giving you a very easy way to manage your training requirements, the content for that training. We'd like to think that we're giving you tremendous visibility here on who's working in roles that they shouldn't be working on. We're going to give you early warning of any expired certifications. And then those dovetailed in with compliance for safety regulations. So if you have some safety related training that has to be renewed every 12 months or every 6 months, we want to make sure you're compliant and ensure that everybody is following that recertification. So this is what the newest modules from 10 and 6 include. I'm going to hand it back to Terry and he can do a quick wrap up.
Excellent. Thanks, Dennis. And yeah, everyone, just as I go into the summary here, our intention with these webinars is always to keep them to under 30 minutes presenting, and then we'll have time for Q&A in a few minutes. But just in terms of a recap, one thing to note, the capabilities we're talking about today, typically these are things that are only found in HR modules of ERP. So tracking your attendance, potentially tracking skills. And what history has shown us is that it's really hard to do these modules economically in the ERP world, and they're never focused for the shop floor and the dynamic environment people deal with on the shop floor. So this is really designed for the shop floor. This is for production supervisors, production management on the shop floor to know what's going on, what they need to do, react quickly in real time to situations in their environment. So respond to exceptions, expiring skills or late staff, start your production on time, know where you're having troubles with that and react quickly to that. And again, the idea of measuring against achievable targets. So if you are running short-staffed, make sure the people that are there aren't being punished all day for the output they're getting that's lower. And finally, this is integrated with our overall production reporting and efficiency improvement capabilities within 10 and 6. So again, if you have this specific requirement, you can certainly use these modules standalone, but you also could grow into or take advantage of other capabilities of 10 and 6 to help improve your operation. So we're going to wrap up there, and I'm going to open up the QA, and I'll just remind you that the chat feature in Teams, it's just over to the right of where your mute button is. If you use the chat feature and type in a question, we'll keep the chat open until 10:45 at the latest. We'll wrap up sooner if the questions fizzle out, but to respect time, we will wrap up at 10:45 sharp. So, I see there's questions coming in already. We have a question. What options are there for creating training content? And I think Dennis partially mentioned this in the presentation, but the training content can be anything really can be linked to in there. It could be videos explaining how something has happened. It could be PDFs, could be Word documents, as long as they have Word on there. device they're logging into. But basically, it can be any type of digital format that you'd like to use. And I think the follow-up on that often then is, how are you managing that? You can create that in your environment. We are mapping to your file locations so that if you have a set of training documents for a startup of a press, we'll be mapping to the folder for those documents and going through them in order as in context as the operator or staff member goes through that training. And if that didn't answer your question, feel free to type a follow-up in. I've got another question here, and Dennis, I'm going to pass this one to you, but if a new employee is added to your third-party timekeeping, like Kronos, can that generate the employee record in 10 and 6 for training?
Okay, that's a very good question. So let me finish off the previous question. One more thing I wanted to add. In the training content, you can have as many steps to a training module as you desire. So there might be 20 or 30 steps required, and you don't have to complete them all on the first day. There is that notion that you can complete your training over several days or weeks, and we keep track of all the steps. And until all the steps are completed, you're not considered to be 100% trained. I just wanted to add that to Terry's comment. But in terms of Kronos, for example, if you add a new person in your time and attendance system and Kronos knows about that person, we automatically synchronize any people that are new to the system into the 10 and 6 system. They become the same set of staffing. In some cases, we know the default department and the default shift that person works from, because that's actually maintained within the Kronos system or AOD or whatever third-party time clock system you have. And if they don't, we will then help you, give you the tools to manage what department they belong and what their default shift is. And when someone's placed in a role on a specific cell, the assumption is they go back to the same job unless you move them on a permanent basis. So all of that is automatically synchronized, so you don't have to maintain your names in 2 different locations.
All right, thanks, Dennis. I've got a couple more questions coming in. Does the system, I'll answer this one, Dennis, does the system support emailing or texting if someone is working in an area that is not fully trained to work on? And yeah, so in addition to the on-screen alert that would happen for the operator, yes, there can be email or text sent in the background, and again, defined based on who the operator is and the department, who that notification goes to. But yes, we definitely support that in all areas of 10 and 6. One more question, Dennis. Can the training module handle revision control of training documents, such as document updated from Rev A to Rev B, then all trained employees on Rev A are marked as needing new training? So I'll let you address that, Dennis.
Yeah, so this would be handled similarly to the idea that if you have training that needs to be recertified after 12 months, you can tag it to be required every 12 months. But on the same note, if you have an updated revision, which is supposed to force everybody to be recertified because that's a critical update to the training, then that would be flagged as a needed training module. And so the next time that person clocks into their station, they're going to be presented with that screen we showed you where they'll have a red module. They can click on the module and do the self-serve training and get that updated latest version so they can get recertified with the updates. It's a very good question. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions out there from anyone? I appreciate all the folks that have asked questions. It gets the ball rolling. If anyone is sitting there thinking they'd like to ask something, please fire away. And if you're having trouble with the chat function for some reason, I'll be brave and say you can unmute yourself and ask a question if you need to, if you're having trouble with the chat. Oh. There's 2 more questions come in. One is, can you speak to any interdependencies with other 10 and 6 modules? And I think maybe I'll ask for a clarification on that. If you mean requirements for other 10 and 6 modules, you can run these modules without running any other 10 and 6 capabilities. There are underlying things like your username and login ID and what access level you have for different things that would be, set up whether you're running 1 or 3 or all the modules of 10 and 6, but there are no requirements for other modules in order to take advantage of the attendance and skills tracking. If that answers the question. If it doesn't, feel free to type in a little more there. Okay, and excellent. Okay, that did. All right. And Dennis, one more for you. If someone is going to work on a work cell, can we require 2 separate trainings to be considered okay to run the job, like the work cell SOP and the plant LOTO?
There's no limit on how many modules are required for a particular area. So what you have to satisfy when you go to that cell is any plant level training, any department level training modules, and any machine specific module. There could be 1, there could be 10. There's no limit on how many modules are required.
Right. And I brought this screen back up, Dennis, that here you can see there's actually 6 trainings that need to be completed in order to be fully certified to run this plant. Like you need your WHMS training to do anything. You need your PPA training to do anything. So yeah, hopefully that illustrates the picture there. If that answers the question for you, Chris, thank you for that. But yeah, you could have 2 or 3 or 5 things they have to complete, and some might be general plant level, but there might be 2 or 3 specific to that department or area. Yep. All right. All right. Excellent. And thanks very much, everyone, for responding so quickly in the chat to confirm we got your questions. Really appreciate that. All right, I'm going to sit quiet just for 1 more minute here to see if any other questions come in. We're quite happy to answer more questions, but also happy to let people get back to their days if that's what they need to do. Oh, I've got 1 more coming in. Okay. How about licensing? All right. Is it site licenses or stations? And Dennis, I'll maybe let you speak to that at a high level, specific to these modules.
Yeah, so these modules follow the same licensing format as the rest of the 10 and 6 system. So it is based on the size of your plant, which is determined by how many areas, cells, workstations that you have within your facility. So the goal here is that on an annual usage fee basis, the larger plant would pay more than a smaller plant. And generally the number of workstations you have is tied to the number of people you have. So it's all fair in that perspective. And if you're already a premium user of the system, you've already been using our software, so the upgrade to do something like this isn't very high. If you're starting out with no other 10 and 6 system, then it's a little bit more expensive for you.
And yeah, to that question further, again, if anyone is looking at what the cost might be for their plant specifically, you can definitely reach out to us. Most of you would have gotten the invitation from me, so you can feel free to send me an email. But based on the size of your plant, as Dennis said, we'd be able to give you feedback on what the cost looks like for your environment. Overall, with all 10 and 6 modules, there is no per user cost. So it's not that you have 300 employees, it's how many machines and lines and processes are we tying to in your operation. So just to maybe make that clear, there's no licensing for how many people want to log in and look at and take advantage of the information in the system. It's really based on the machines and processes that we're tied to and monitoring. All right. All right, well, listen, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank everyone again for taking the time to join us today. And hopefully you got value out of what you saw today. Our goal with these, like I say, is to keep them short and to the point about capabilities that meet needs we see in our customers that we think others might need as well. If you do have follow-up questions, you can email me anytime. That's terry.depasquale@10and6.com. And happy to follow up with you. If you have others in your organization that you'd like to see this, very happy to have a one-on-one with anyone who'd like to do that. And we also will be sending you a link to the recording of today's webinar in the next 48 hours. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to say on behalf of 10 and 6, thanks very much. And Dennis, thank you for today.
Oh, thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.